They met you and they'll tell people.
Yes.
Okay. Would you do a roll call, Sylvette?
Certainly, Frank. Frank Facciano,
Present.
Ron Heckman, Larry Hemberger,
Present.
Glenn Reedman,
Present.
Mike Stershek.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. Is there any public comment?
Not today, sir.
Okay, then. We'll move on to the action items. We need a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 24, 2021. So moved. One. Second?
Second.
Glenn, second. Thank you. And accept the financial statements from July. Do we present first, or? No, that's.
I gotta walk you through.
Okay.
I guess that's my cue, right, Frank?
Please, Todd.
Okay.
Todd has a most excellent financial
What?
review here.
So good. Up here. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
You know, it's a good month when Frank says, I'm thinking about maybe presenting the financials for July. He wasn't thinking about it last April when we had 2,800, but he must have heard that we surpassed, I had our best July on record. And it's like, hey, I can present that. So that's a good sign for us. So we had a really good month of July. We actually had our best July on record. It was actually 3% higher than 2019. So, and I just want to remind everybody of this number. Remember that way back when, 2,700 folks? So we've come a long way since that time, and you can see every month this year we're actually going up. And as I've said numerous times, you know, we need that throughput. We need that activity to generate our revenue, and that's a good sign for us that we are back up to, you know, 2019 levels and now surpassing that. And a lot of that is due to that Allegiant crew base that we added in February of 2020, and really didn't get the benefit of it until this year when you really saw things start to go in a positive way. Next slide. And this just kind of gives you, you know, our landing reports. Again, this is kind of how we make our money. You can see, you know, and we can start comparing versus 19, 2020, we're going to call more of an, you know, an outcast. So versus 19 landings, I know Frank thinks those are more sexy. The landings are down 15%. I focus on the landed weight, which is where the money comes from. So you can see landed weight, we're pretty much on par, a little bit less than we were in 2019. But you can see our conservative budget, and I don't even know if it was conservative at the time, but we certainly are doing much better than we thought we'd be at this point in time. Next slide. Again, you can really see we had a net income for the month of July, 506. And if you remember, our budgeted income for the whole year was 68,000. So to have 506 in 1 month, and guess what? There's no CARES in there. So that shows you that's pure, we had a good month. So that's stuff that you can really feel good about. But you're also starting to see what's happening on those expenses. Our expenses are being well managed, and we're trying to catch up on the labor force, and that's something we have to address because at some point we can't sustain this activity with those expenses, and that's what we're going to talk about later with some of these revisions. You know, you need more people, and you're starting to wear out some of your folks, and also what's going on with the labor market. But you can see overall net income, 506K positive without any CARES. We had total revenue up 940 without CARES versus 27% versus budget. Good stuff. Again, aviation services, overall expenses still down 7% versus budget. Did somebody jump on? John had a, did you have a question, John?
No, that was, my computer started speaking, I had to turn it off.
Okay, all right. Next slide. Year to date, now you remember we had an absolutely awful first quarter. I mean, it was probably our worst first quarter in a long, long time, probably 50 years. Because you remember last year in the pandemic, that really didn't come in until, you know, late March. So most of the first quarter we were moving along pretty well. So it was our worst first quarter. Second quarter, pretty good. And you can kind of see us ramping up to the level we were at. But overall, net income is 410, without CARES, an extraordinary income here, which is good stuff. So this number here, without CARES, again, we're focusing on without CARES because, it's gravy. And it's been helpful. It's definitely a bridge for us, but we know long-term, it's not something that we can count on to sustain ourselves. Did you have a question? Yes.
What falls into the category of extraordinary revenue?
That would be like our easements that we had before. We have some of those things that are not in our true budget. Most of that was like the easements we did on the property over in, when we sold the property, that was stuff that we had in there. Some miscellaneous income, that also includes interest income and some of the things that aren't really operational. So again, it's talking about being self-sustaining. Again, my favorite here, you can see parking revenue up 13% versus budget. Did anybody know what's our top revenue source? Quiz. All right, thank you, okay. And you remember how bad February was, and we're still doing pretty good on expenses when we talk about snow in February. Next slide, excuse me. Again, this is kind of our year-to-date operating. Boom, 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 up, up, up. And again, we've talked about before, we can't cut our way to success. We did that to kind of sustain ourselves by lowering our expenses, but certainly we need revenue to kind of grow. We can't do it by cutting our way. But again, you can see all these numbers are up, 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 up versus budget, which is all positive stuff. Next slide. Again, you can see some of the positive things there, aviation services versus our budget, terminal, parking, airfield, all these things are positive revenue. So we're not talking expenses, we're talking revenue. Next slide. And then you can see who's on top, I'm just saying. I just want to remind you who's on top, 1.4 million, that's really key for us, but also you got to remember, we got a bunch of CARES in there. We still have that CARES money. Next slide. And this is our cash flow. I mean, the interesting thing we talk about cash flow, and this does include our revisions that we'll be talking about probably after I go through the financials for our budget revisions. But you can see most of these are in yellow, and those are some of the revisions that we have in here. And some of this stuff is timing. The next slide there, Savannah. You can kind of see what's going on, some of our changes here. We'll talk about them later in some of our amendments. But as our expenses go up, these go up, all these reserves, contingency reserves. So all these things go up as well. So even though, we might have more cash, the measuring stick went up as well. So it's really cash on hand. So when our expenses go up, that cash on hand goes up as well. The same thing with our reserves. They go up. So it means it's a little bit more challenging. So you can see down here, and I'm only doing 6 months, and I actually go out a lot further. I only show 6 months because it's pretty, as you can see already, it's pretty busy here. But you can see, if we go back to the 2019 level, $60,000 a day, and at the end of 6 months, we are 153. Still well above our 60, and again, that includes these higher reserve numbers going up as well. Next slide. I think that's the last one. Any questions? Yes.
Do we plan on making that 60,000 number higher with the expenses for additional?
Glad you asked that question. We have that coming up shortly after. We have another thing we'll talk about, the budget amendment. I'm glad you brought that up. Great question. But I will answer it shortly.
How much CARES money have we not yet received that is committed to us?
Also talk about that later. It's on my slide later. All right.
We're ahead of them.
You guys are, I knew you were going to ask that question, so any other questions?
Somebody leaked your script today.
There you go.
I think so.
Any other questions? All right, and this is something we should really feel good about overall, given, and one thing I didn't mention, we do a report with our consultants, and Tom might talk about this in his director's report, and they talked about the throughput of the airport. I explained this to Frank, and the comparisons between us and other airports. So from the end of June, early July, our throughput, meaning people going through the terminal, going through the checkpoint, should I say, was up 1% versus 2019. The rest of the industry was down 24%. And you remember those 10 or 9 or 10 airports that we use in our benchmarking study every year? We're doing better than all of them. So again, not everybody's as fortunate as us. Other airports are struggling, so it's really based on the work of the staff, the board, and everybody here. The great job that we're at this point. But diversification, a lot of things, we are very fortunate because there are still other airports that are really struggling, and we're back to where we were pre-pandemic. Any other questions, concerns? Before I get to your questions, which I'll answer once we go to the next slide. Frank's got to give me the cue, and I think you got to vote.
And we're going to accept the financial statements. Do we have a move?
And we'll do those for June and July.
And thank you, June and July, as it says.
And I went over July, and you can see what the Junes were in there, but it's really important because we do quarterly financials that we have to send out, so the Junes are in there as well. But June was a good month as well.
Somebody make a motion?
Mike? Second? I'll second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Done. And now the budget amendment presentation.
All right, and I'm just going to kind of walk you through our, where we were from last year, particularly for people that weren't here when we did our budget approval. And a lot of this stuff you'll see when we do the 2022 budget in a few months. When we did our 2021 budget, these are almost every year we talk about the same vision that we have. We want to be financially responsible, strategic, and manage expectations. That's just kind of where we start every budget. Next slide. And last year's budget goals, remember them, because it was a little different. We have to start out with managing resources. Obviously, we got to run our airports safely, do what we need to do. We got to meet our debt service when our debt collector's banging at our door. But this was really important. These two were really important. If you remember, we actually talked about two budgets. We actually talked about a first half, kind of conservative, and let's see what's happening in the second half because of the environment at that particular time. That's why I wanted to remind you, we postponed a lot of stuff to that second half because we were in survival mode. We were. We also said we had the ability to increase the rates if we needed to do that in the second half. But we talked about, that's kind of our backstop if we need it. Next slide. And then, again, our assumptions to remember. We had a balanced budget, but that included 3.5, and we actually got another, and I'll talk about our amendment that we did later. But that balanced budget included $3.5 million of CARES money. We would not have balanced without that $3.5 million. So that 68 grand that you asked about earlier, take out that CARES, that's an ugly number. You can see our revenue assumptions based on 60 to 65% of the 2019 activity. Again, now we're talking about being up to 2019 level, but, November, October of last year, we weren't thinking that. We certainly weren't there, but I just want to remind you. Budget expenses 6% below 2017 actual. We were really kind of like keeping expenses to a minimum. Crawling along, doing the best we can, even with $3.5 million of CARES. Then you can kind of see we actually increased our rates 10% on the landing fees and on our apron fees. Slightly below, I think it was 9.6, I believe it was. And the terminal was 3%. Again, if you remember, some of our long-term goals was to lower, before the pandemic, was to lower the rates because we wanted to make ourselves more competitive, but we didn't have a choice, and we did the 10% and 3%. And again, remember, 68 grand, you can't get much lower than that. All right, next slide. And we did in a budget amendment, or budget revision, should I say, in April, we did a revision, and this is what we did. We got that additional CARES money. I didn't include the $62 there, $298,062. Connie's saying, don't spend my $62. But we got $298K, and we reduced our bad debt because of some of the CARES and relief for concessionaires. We felt comfortable that the CARES money would cover us on the bad debt that we might have for some of our concessionaires. And then we'll use that money to increase our personnel costs and other operating expenses, contract, professional, et cetera, legal, whatever. And that resulted in no net overall change. So we still stayed with 68K of overall net income, but we just took that money and used it. Because again, we were in survival mode, we got another 298K, so now we're up to almost $3.8 million of CARES, but we're spending it to kind of move us along. Next slide. Then the first half. So what we're doing, and this is really kind of what we're talking about, what you had said earlier, Brian, and just to kind of walk through this, which is we are changing our budget at this point, but what we're going to do is we're going to change it. We're going to freeze the first half. So whatever happened from January to June is frozen. That's it. We're going to lock that. We're going to call that budget at this point for the first 6 months. Then we had a budget for the second half, but we're going to make some adjustments to that. Does that make sense? So the first half, and this is really important to kind of keep in mind, first half actuals that we talked about, we didn't really dive into June because we talked about July, but the first half actuals, because remember we had 500,000, so it was 1.5 and change. We had, through 6 months, we had $1,051,000. Now remember, we got a bunch of CARES in there. So we actually had negative 83,000 without CARES and that extraordinary income. So again, talking about self-sufficiency, this was good. We relied on that CARES. We want to get to the point where we're fine without CARES long term. But you can kind of see where these numbers compare the budget, actual for last year, and then also net income for 2019. And you can see all these numbers here. But again, CARES, that's what's here, net revenue without CARES, all these things are good things based on what we know. So this is in the books. Okay? So back to your number, 68 grand, you got $1 million already, first half. Let's talk about the second half next, okay? So going to the next slide. So this is kind of the first half actuals, and this is just revenues. This is the lock. This is the first half lock. This is the second half budget, what we had. And we don't usually break our budget, you see it month to month, but we have one for every month. First half, that's the actual revenue. That's the second half budget. We actually thought that things were going to be a little bit better in the second half, if you remember. This is our adjustment to that number. So we're taking this number, almost 15 million, up to, 16 million, call it, okay? Based on what we see now. And you're seeing these revenue numbers that we're increasing. This number is Hangar 11, this where we see we are right now, hopefully that'll be improved, but that's our conservative number. If we wanted to say if we want to come in at the same level as 2019, this number could have easily been 2.8, 2.9 million. I'm a little conservative, so I'm not giving you all the money up front. I just want to make sure we got something in the bank so we can all sleep good at night. So this is 1.3. If I was super aggressive, I could have said 2.9 right here, but it's 1.3. Okay? Next slide. And you're talking about, well, how are you going to use that 1.3? So what we're doing is, most of it, as you can see, is in the personnel side. We're actually talking about adding 14 net new positions. 14 net new positions that went on our budget. We can do that. Obviously, this is for a partial year, but we're also forecasting what that is extrapolated out for the full year, and that gets pretty expensive. But we feel comfortable with that, and I'll talk about, the way things are going, and we've got some cushion on the back end to cover us with some of the residual CARES there. But you can see where most of this stuff is going. We're just putting it back into real estate, some of that stuff that's transferred over when we sold that Bonvoy. We have some taxes now. We have, parking goes up. Where's my favorite parking? We got folks in our back pocket. So that goes up. We got to give them money. You got running down some of these other things here. There you go. And some of these advertising, that's just recruitment. We're showing it under the advertising lines, but that is advertisements. Hey, we got jobs here. Come work with us. So again, this was strategically what we went through, and you got to see one of the things I know Glenn's excited about is some of the dues and subscriptions. Some of the things to increase our technology so that we can improve the passenger experience and so people aren't so upset when they come in. So that's 12.8. Next slide. And then you can see that's here, 12.8. So it's gonna be 12.4. We're making an adjustment to Queen City. That's just me again, saying let's pull back a little bit so we can all sleep at night. We put some additional numbers in there for depreciation. It comes out to a net wash. And for that 1.3 million, we're gonna spend that 1.3 million. But you gotta remember, we expected the second half to be pretty good anyway. So that's 1.4 million, almost right there. So you can see with the new number, you asked me earlier, is now 2.4 million versus 68,000. See that? So that's, we're not going from here to here, we're going from here to here. So that's something we should all feel good about, and feel good about that at this point. That number is a pretty big adjustment. But again, you got to keep in mind, this number includes CARES. So if you take the CARES out, it's certainly not as great. But again, not as bad as we thought we were bad. Okay? And again, like I said, things could go better. I mean, you saw we got a really good running start when we saw July. We did this first half, second half. We got a good running start with July. We didn't think July was going to be that good. So we got a running start on these numbers because we did the first half, second half. Any questions? Because again, I know I'm going through a lot of stuff. And go back to the one slide so that this one here, I mean, it's really important to keep in mind. This is a slightly different breakout. Normally on our financials, you see salaries, wages, benefits, and all that stuff on that kind of P&L 3, we call it that third expense line. Also within cost of sales, there are also personnel costs. We just broke it out this way to make it a little easier, but this is benefits, this is salaries. Go ahead.
One quick question on that 900. So it's not only for increase, so it's an increase in budget for the 14 new positions. Is it also for increase in salaries for purposes of retention,
Yes.
things like that?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we're working with our HR department to determine which areas need the most. But you got to remember, I mean, we're already, let's say earliest we could do this is September. I mean, realistically, you're talking October. So if you extrapolate that out, that's a big number for a full year. So, you know, that might be only 3 or 4 months that you really are dealing with 900,000. That's a pretty good chunk of change. And you see how people manipulate their budgets for 1 year and they say, hey, I'm gonna add these people at the end of the year. And it's okay, but then next year, multiply that number times 3 or 4, you kind of see what that annualized number is. It's a big number. Yes.
With the 14 positions that you're adding, how many people are we really short at the airport right now? And how many positions are you trying to fill?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. In terms of vacancies,
This is a lot of vacancy.
yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have a grand total,
Just a,
but a ballpark, I would say if we kind of look at different groups, I know there's certain groups in particular that we have some shortages, but you're probably at least 25 positions short right now. They're unfilled.
Out of, what are the FTEs? Was it 3?
FTEs are 2, where are we at FTE wise right now? Just
We're
looked at
about
that.
a little over 200, like 206.
206? Okay.
so almost 10% down.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see that in the expenses when Todd walked through some of the numbers. Even though we were very conservative, as he always talks about on budgeting for expenses, we came in below on the expense line. That wasn't because we did some extraordinary things. It was because we didn't have people here. And that's been a significant challenge. And, you know, we'll talk about, you know, again, we saw the numbers, for example, for Allegiant this year and in this month and what that looks like. And when we're doing more activity with fewer people, it's problematic. It's not sustainable. And, you know, there's a number of things we had in the 2020 budget, number of positions and other things we had in the 2020 budget, which took place in November of 19. That's when we budgeted for the next year, anticipating all of these great things, and we removed them. We put all of these things, as Todd points out, on, you know, cost containment. We're going to put these things on ice, and we did that in 2021. But with activity back, it's really not sustainable for us at this point to not add some of the positions we knew we needed a couple of years ago, yet alone the positions we're unable to fill right now. So adjusting the numbers for market is important, but also getting these positions back into the budget.
Nearly 40 positions you need to fill right now.
Yeah.
In a tough time to hire.
Yeah, when there's billboards all down 22.
Yeah,
all-
everyone's,
Yeah.
Although we're also looking at, everybody's kind of watching September 6th and the expiration of unemployment, the additional unemployment.
that's a factor for sure.
I think so.
Also, the availability of childcare, I think, is equally, if you don't have anywhere to take your kids, then you can't
Right.
work in a lot of cases.
That's right.
That's another factor.
Darren, you want to open an on-site daycare center?
That's Connie's department.
And
It's a revenue generator, what are you talking about?
Right.
And most of these positions, what we said is, some of these positions were slated for, at some point next year anyway. Let's just get a running start. So that's really why we did it now. Let's get a run. Because like I said, 900,000, Tom talks about some of these positions, but 900,000 for a 3 or 4 month period is a lot of money. Again, it's probably, we could all use more, but that's certainly getting us going in the right direction. Next slides. So that, I think I went through that one, and this one.
I think we covered them all.
Yeah, and then this one I wanted to kind of run through, and this is what somebody asked, well, how much cares do you have? Michael asked that question, right?
Yeah.
So, this is kind of, a sheet that I came out with Tom, and I worked on this a little bit, but it's really saying this is what we use in 2020, 4.2. So overall, there's about, call it $18 million worth of CARES. Now, that sounds like a lot, and it's not all CARES, but operational support that we didn't normally have, because they're not all called CARES. But 18 million. Now, remember last year we lost 12 million in revenue, but I'm not going to point that out in case you think that's a lot and we should be skipping. 18 million, this is 4.3 million that we used last year. This is our plan. You see it in our budget for this year, 3.8. Okay, that leaves us approximately 9.5. That's our backstop for some of those positions, because if revenue doesn't come back, we got to cover them some way. If there's another downturn, we got to have some cushion. That makes us feel a little bit more comfortable that we've got this backstop, knowing that that'll cover us for some of those big deltas for the next year or two, until hopefully revenue is sustainable. So, and we've got a few years. This hasn't actually been distributed, but this is, I think we got 4 years from when all these grants started. This one actually hasn't started yet, but the CARES was actually in 2020, so you got time to use that money. And we're using it strategically, because everybody says, why don't you use it all? We had those calls. Darren was on those calls. Tom was on the call. Why don't you use it all now? We've talked about that before, and the only ones who said that are the airlines. Because if we use it all now, that lowers the cost. It doesn't help us, that helps them. So it just helps us temporarily cash flow, and then this money, instead of it going to us, goes to them in the settlement. Because we talked about the settlement before and what we pay them. Our costs for the terminal and the airfield, if their revenues exceed those costs, we got to give them money back. So, and then where are our biggest cost centers as far as cost? Airfield and terminal. Okay, so anybody got any questions on that? Because I think it's important that as we do this, that everybody should feel good and be able to sleep at night knowing that we're doing this with some degree of thought process. Okay, next slide. And I think Ryan, I'll talk about a little bit of stuff, and then hopefully Ryan can talk about the capital items here at this point. So I went through the operational, it's the 1.3 that we're talking about, and some of the positions. This is the adjustments we're going to, because we also talked about making adjustments on the capital. So originally, the original budget for 2021 was 1.2 million and change. See that down here? Sorry, it's below the screen. 1.2 million at the very low. If you're looking at it on screen, it's the last item on the screen. 1.2 million. So then you have the first part of, this is the stuff, some of the stuff that we had originally in there. We spent 2.4 million. These are items that we couldn't wait for that we spent. Because we always have these items year to year where we have to make adjustments quickly. There's certain things we need to do, and we do them. Like, for example, those golf carts, we're working on the terminal. We need some way to get these folks back and forth, that they push back and forth over there, because they, we're working on a connector out there, and they can't get through the way they normally would. That's why we ordered the golf cart. Again, some of that is good stuff. Some of these wheelchairs, some of those things were things just really, reacting to what's going on in our workplace, in our market. But you can see overall, we spent $323,000 out of that 1.2 million so far. Next slide. This is the second half. These are the items that are already in there. 631. Okay? But these are the items that we want to add to that number. So it is an additional total for the second half, 1.8. It's a slightly 877, I think was the number down there. I don't have it memorized. Right below there, Steph. Right below there. So that I don't know if you can see that. Right below the share there, you can't see it there. You might have to, yeah, so go back. Yep. 877 is a difference. But this is really saying, and then the biggest items on here are some of these properties, and maybe Darren can talk about that when we talk about that. You're doing that now or next time. But some properties that became available close to the airport that we think are important for us. But some of these things are just things that we know are going to be critical. So when they replace some of the signage over in the parking area, we talk about some of our lightning strikes, shuttle van, some things, again, responding to what's going on in our market and what's going on for us, making sure we're prepared. Some of these things we think are more critical. And the things that were pushed back, some things that were taken off the list, either became no more needed. We had a few things where the airline said we don't want it anymore, that we had on our budget that we don't need that anymore. But most of the items were just pushed back to 2022 just because of timing. But these things became more critical. So the overall difference, like I said, is 877. This is at 1.8 spend and from, for the second half of the year. Okay? And next slide. And then this is kind of recapping them here. So you had the original budget, 213, 214. We had unbudgeted 109 that we spent. Critical items already didn't surpass the overall total so far. That's really what we focus on, at 1.2. But you can see these are some of the things that we know that were in the original stuff that we're still on target to do. And these are the things that we're adding. So it's an overall adjustment of 877, 453. At this point, I'll open it up to Darren or Ryan if they want to add anything else before we open it up for questions.
I don't have anything to add unless someone has questions about anything.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Again, we had that really good month of July. I mean, we having a true advantage of kind of seeing our budget. And then we got a month that was really good. So we got a nice run to start. So we should all feel a little bit better because we got a little bit of look into the crystal ball. So we did it on the first half, and guess what? July was good. So again, we had that backstop we talked about for the CARES to kind of cover us some cushion in the short term. But I think overall, these are things that we should move forward on. Does anybody have any questions? I see you. Yes.
We have a feel for where things are headed for the rest of the year. Going to keep above last year as July was, or are we going to start slowing down a little bit given what's happened with the variant and all that kind of stuff?
I'll let Tom respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you will see some impact based on the variant. One of the things, and Todd, alluded to it, was we had the Allegiant base that was added, and we really didn't get to see what that could do until we got into this summer. And one of the things we knew when they added the base was it was a 2-aircraft base, but we actually had 3 aircraft that they were operating for us this summer, right up to August 16th. So now we're back to the 2 aircraft, originating in the morning. So we do see a bit of a reduction now halfway into August. I still think we're going to be very close in August in terms of the numbers and passenger travel to 2019 August, but are we going to eclipse it? I don't think so. And really September and beyond is a question mark. September is historically our lowest kind of passenger traffic month of all 12. It's just a quiet time in general. But we'll see what that means, and how that translates. I would tell you we could look at forecasts by the industry, but we know how great those have been. It's really been month by month because it's been so dynamic. So vacation, I think as we get into the holidays, one of the things we discussed is the fact that people largely didn't travel for the holidays last year. I mean, there was obviously some, but some really deferred. And I don't really see that happening this year. I think people will be traveling. And I think that's going to really help the numbers as well as we get into
I think there'll be some pent-up demand this year compared to last.
Just like we saw in the summer.
And two things to keep in mind, I think are really important. Number one, we didn't use the full, when I talked about the budget, remember I said it could have been 3 million, 2.9. We didn't use all that, so there's some conservativeness in the number. And at least for now, we have some protection with some of that CARES there. So, you know, I think we should feel pretty good right now that we can weather this storm as we go, you know, into the fall. Okay. Any other questions at this point? Because again, you know, normally we do these things, we'll be coming back in a few months to talk about 2022. So, but
You're comfortable with the second half budget?
Mhm.
And we'll most likely exceed it,
yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
But again, you remember our 68 grand. If I can say something, 68 grand is almost embarrassing to say out loud. I mean, I've said that to a few banks and they're like, you're kidding me, right? No. We're conservative, but, so it's much better when you say, you know, a number that everybody can look at and go, okay, 68 grand. All right, I can live with that. Any other questions? I know I've been talking long, but this is a pretty big amendment because, like I said, that's part of the reason we did it different than the budget that we did in April, because we are changing every single number because we're locking in that first half. Okay? All right, thank you.
So we need a motion to approve the budget amendments as presented. Mike?
I'll move. I guess I'm here.
Don't move.
Second, Glenn, was that Glenn?
Yeah, second.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Motion's approved. Any new business for the Finance Committee? All right, then, motion to adjourn. So Mike
Don't move.
and Glenn. Thank you, everybody.
Good job.
Do we have, who's chairing our next meeting?
Mike Dowd is on the line
Okay.
for our next committee.
I'm here.
We're gonna just jump right into it, Mike?
It's okay for me. We might as well do it. It's not a long agenda, so why don't we just move forward?
Giddy up.
So Beth, will you do a roll call for us?
Sure thing, Mike. Brian Dames,
Here.
Jeff Matskin,
Here.
Chris Worley, Tara Zirinsky. We do have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. All right. Thank you, Sabat. We'll ask the question we always ask and never seem to get a response. Do we have any public comment?
No, we don't, sir.
Excellent. Then we have one action item and two discussion items. First, the minutes of the June 24th meeting were distributed to you electronically. Does anyone have an addition or correction to those minutes? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as distributed?
So moved.
So moved.
Sounds like we had a chorus of people, so I think we've got a motion and a second. Everybody in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opponents? Like sign? Excellent. Thank you very much, folks. Let's continue to move on. We have an air service update. Who's going to present that to us?
That would be me, Mike.
All right. The table is yours. You'll have a lot of
Great.
reporting to do today then.
What was that? All right, thank you. So we'll run through some slides here. Certainly, as usual, just if you have any has questions, feel free to stop me or save them until the end, whichever you would prefer. Just going to run through a couple slides. These slides, the first three are actually slides out of our presentations. That are the last set of presentations we made when we went to the Roots Conference. So these just to give you guys a flavor of some of the things we share with the airlines. This one was just a little bit of our catchment area leakage. So catchment area we're defining on this one is about a 90-minute drive. I can tell you, our catchment area probably goes a little farther north than what we're showing on here, but typically, we don't include other airports in our catchment area. So, but you can see we still leak a lot of traffic. We're only capturing about 22.4%. Not great. The good thing is, last time we did this, we were only capturing about 13% or so. So, improvements, we'll take them where we can get them, but still some work to do. You can see most of our traffic that we leak goes either to Philly or to Newark, a little bit over there to JFK, and, very small amounts to LaGuardia and up to, tiny amount up there to Wilkes-Barre as well. Prior to the pandemic, we were rolling. I mean, things were going really good, 47% growth in traffic over that period, that 4 or 5 year period there. And we can see in the neat things where you kept increasing seats, and then we also kept increasing passengers in those seats, and you can kind of see as you fill the seats, you get more. And that's really the kind of the moral of the story here. And then, 2020 happened, hopefully, as we're starting to get back to these things. Now in 2021, we're starting to hopefully get back on that growth curve again as we move forward. And I think Todd kind of alluded to this too. Now this was from back in May, because like I said, these were for the Roots Conference, so we haven't updated since then. But, our throughput was at 104% of our 2019 numbers. You see our two, kind of New York City encapsulating all those New York airports, and then the Philly, both quite a bit lower than that. So you can see where we're responding. And I will say, for the most part, regional airports are definitely recovering slightly faster than the large airports. Due probably a lot to, no international traffic really happening, or limited international traffic still. So, but I think Todd said the average was about, they were probably about 76% or so, if I remember right. So either way, we're doing much better than the industry average. So at the Roots Conference, met with 7 airlines, mostly positive from all of them, which was good. At that point, Allegiant was happy that things were improving. I think I did just talk to them last week, and they're actually a lot more happy now than they were back at the end of May, because things are really improving now. The one thing we talked to them about is really start to look at what new destinations that we can do out of here where we take advantage of those based aircraft. Because, as we've said a couple times, we really haven't seen what that base can do for us yet. So we can start looking at things, maybe going west a little more as opposed to just Florida destinations. There's a lot of opportunities. So, as we'll actually be meeting with them next month and talking about some of those potential new destinations. American overall, again, was, they were happy where we were. Charlotte was performing about average for their stations into Charlotte. Chicago still needs improvement, and that's business travel. I mean, it's not going to improve until the business travel comes back. And we tried to talk to them about DFW a little bit. They're not really too interested in talking about that, and I can tell you until Chicago improves, that's not going to be a subject for them and us to talk about. But definitely think it's still on the table for future. Atlanta, our Atlanta route on Delta is phenomenal at this point in time. It was one of the few profitable routes they had when we met with them. So very happy with where that is. We are expecting to see our 717 come back, which is nice. Gives us a little bigger aircraft, an aircraft the business community really does like a lot more than the 50-seaters or the 70-seaters that we're seeing. Detroit, similar to Chicago, that really is business travel. I don't think there's a whole lot of leisure travel to Detroit, and even going west through Detroit. So again, that will start to get better as business travel comes around. Just as an aside, it was, they were all talking business travel probably coming back. Everyone expecting a September timeframe. I just read an article this morning from American saying probably not as going to go as well in September as we had expected. They are saying they're not really adjusting their forecast a whole lot at this point. They're kind of taking a wait and see approach to see what this Delta variant does. So we'll see. To run through a couple other of these, Breeze is the new airline we've talked quite a bit about. I can tell you they're not too excited about taking Allegiant on head on right now in the next couple of years, which wasn't surprising to us. Good thing is we have a great relationship with those guys. The folks running their route planning are former Allegiant employees. So we know them well. I definitely think they see the value of this airport, and we'll continue to have good conversations with them as they, get established and are ready to maybe come into some of those markets. Sun Country they continue to evolve. They were more of a charter airline for a long time with very limited service out of totally out of Minneapolis. They're starting to grow a little bit, still pretty much in the state of Minnesota, for their bases at this point in time and flying out of there, but I definitely think some potential there. They're looking to double in size for their fleet over the next couple of years, so I think they're around 20 aircraft now. I think they're talking 42 or something over the next couple of years, so definitely some potential there, possibly. We do see them here right now running charters, some casino charters and things in and out, and we're gonna start seeing them as part of our Amazon freight contract. They'll be running a 737 in here starting next month. So, potential for the future there. Probably our best meeting we had, in my mind, was Spirit. You know, we haven't talked a lot to them. Another airline, the route planning manager we met with is a former Allegiant employee there as well, that we also know well, so that was good. Definitely not something for today, but they want to continue having conversations, and I think, you know, there's some potential there over the next couple of years, you know, and honestly, a 2-year potential kind of fits in nicely with the terminal expansion projects and things as well, so overall, good conference.
Darren, can I ask you one question on that slide?
Yeah, absolutely.
This may be a dumb question, but the teams that fly in here for Iron Pigs, Phantoms, whatever, do they fly or do they bus in?
Most of the Iron Pigs and Phantoms are bus. We get a little bit of, like when the Phantoms do, and if their schedule's normal, and they do, like when they go to North Carolina, Charlotte, they'll fly out sometimes. But 99% of their travel's all on bus. So, yeah.
Darren, that's true of outgoing and incoming, so it's not only true of the teams, our teams going out, but is it true of the teams coming in as well? Most of them travel by bus?
Yeah, that's correct, Mike.
Thank you.
So one of the things we talked to most of the airlines there was San Juan. Definitely something that we have all talked about. I know something a little near and dear to our chairman's heart as well. Trying to find a carrier to get us connectivity to San Juan. As you can see, obviously, we capture none of that traffic. You know, we're leaking 97%, so only 3% of the people going to San Juan start out of this airport from this area. A lot of positive feedback. Now, take that with a grain of salt. You know, it's positive feedback. It's nobody that's ready to pull the trigger today, but enough positive feedback that we want to keep the momentum going and do some things to keep exploring this. So, thank you to Matt for connecting us with a couple of some of the community leaders in the Hispanic community right now that we're working with. We're putting together, currently working on a survey to kind of better understand. You know, we can pull all the census data, travel data, those things, but it'll help us to have more survey data from those folks to understand why they're traveling, find out who's got friends and relatives still that they're going back, how often, things like that. So that's currently, the survey is created in English. We're currently working on translating into Spanish right now. So as soon as that's ready, we're gonna get that out there. One of the folks we're working with is Victor Martinez from Mega Radio. He is gonna help us push that out to the community. And we're actually also reaching out to some other folks across the valley, you know, some other Hispanic groups across the valley to help get that out there. So, yeah, and we'll definitely use all of our normal partners to circulate that as well. So,
Hispanic chamber.
you have a question?
If someone takes that on, is it most likely going to be American?
As far as the airline,
A San Juan.
it's gonna be
have a
one of the
San Juan
low-cost
base.
carriers. It won't be American. It'll be a low-cost carrier if I had to guess. It'll be Allegiant, it'll be Spirit. It'll be, you know, Sun Country, I think, was one that we actually had a really good conversation with about potentially doing that at some point. So I'd be very surprised if it were any of the legacy carriers. Because it's gonna be typical low-cost carrier service, like, so it's gonna be probably twice a week to start, you know, that type of thing. And although the legacy carriers have started to do a little bit more of that through the pandemic, that's just not their model, you know, so. So more to come. I mean, the one thing I will say, very cautiously optimistic that we can get this service at some point, but I also, you know, as I keep trying to tell everybody, this is definitely a marathon and not a sprint, so it's not gonna probably happen quickly, but I feel like we can get there.
There's definitely, and it was interesting to see the census data released that showed increased growth in Pennsylvania as a result of Latino populations.
Yep.
I listened to the Spanish the radio station in the morning, and pretty much a weekly conversation is air service. And I think somebody mentioned to me that they had heard what I had heard, which is that they're kind of just promoting ABE as an easy and convenient destination to fly from in general.
Yeah,
So,
if you saw last week when Victor was on
Yeah.
wearing his AB hat and everything,
Yep,
he was
yeah,
over
he
here,
had
so
that
he's our biggest fan right now, which is fantastic. It's great to have him helping us out.
There is, and this is, you know, should we get to the marathon finish line with this, then the conversation will begin in earnest on service to Dominican Republic as well.
Which is a little more difficult just because of It's an international
Yeah,
destination.
and everybody's totally aware of that, but that's one of the currents of conversation. At the same time that a lot of people are talking about San Juan, a lot of people are also interested in
There was
Dominican.
talk, and this goes back to prior to pandemic, so I don't know where they're at with it, but there was definitely talk about pre-clearance in the Dominican.
Yeah.
So that obviously makes, if that happens, that makes it achievable
easier.
for us without having a customs facility here. But I haven't heard more about that. I'm assuming that probably kind of got put on hold. But hopefully that comes back around at some point.
Both groups keep growing in Allentown and the Lehigh Valley as a whole.
Yeah.
And then as you showed, our catchment area is a 90-minute drive. Reading is another
Yeah, I mean,
fast
Brooks
growing.
Brooks County is so huge for this piece of it.
Yeah.
Which is also what's great about having the radio station on board because they reach all that population. So that really helps us out. So we'll certainly, more to come on this. We'll keep everybody updated as we go, but we're going to keep pushing this. We talked last time a little about our Fly Local program, so we're going to go ahead and we'll show this video first here, hopefully. Come on. All right, here we go.
I'm Rich Levy, representing Lehigh Valley Health Network.
Hi, I'm Andrea Weissmiller with Joshi Hotel Group.
Mi nombre es Víctor Martínez de la estación de Radio Mega.
I am here representing Never Grow Vacations.
I'm Paul Anthony with IBW Local 375. At the Chamber, we choose to fly local.
It's our players, mascots, our staff. We're dedicated and we pledge to fly out of the ABE.
We're our own growing, thriving market. It's critical that we have a great airport. We're fortunate that we have ABE.
Well, at BSI, we have business in 42 different states, and we travel quite a bit to them, but our clients also travel to us. And I think we get more yeses because we have easy access to be able to get our executives in from anywhere in the country.
It's what we tell people all the time about their health care. Right? When you have a great system right here in the Valley, there's no reason to go outside the Valley.
So thank you to Colin for putting together the award-winning video as usual.
Well done.
Autographed copy from Frank.
But it won't flip. Can you flip the next slide for me?
There you go.
I don't know why it won't. Thank you. And you can see these are just some of the companies. Get rid of that again. There we go. Some of the companies, and it's crazy. This is really, it's growing quickly, and we reached out, did some, initial outreach, and now people are coming to us, which is great. So we're seeing it. Sharing the videos, getting a lot of good play on social media with all the videos as we go. We've done, you can see a bunch of different things. We had the Iron Pigs out at their gate. Colin and Megan and I were here at 5 a.m. to meet the BSI folks on their way out on a flight one day, just trying to find different ways to put it out there to the community. So this will also help us as we go to talk to airlines. We're going to be able to show some of this stuff and show the community support. The other piece of this is it's been proven at other regional airports when you have a program like this, it does start to increase ridership. So, getting people to be aware, to check this airport first is always important to us.
I'm surprised that PPL isn't up there.
They will be. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, because I was in an elevator in 8th Avenue parking garage in Allentown. It's like ABE surround, like
Yes.
everywhere. You're like, you can't even get away from it. So that's surprising to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was our marketing team that did all the AV stuff down there.
I know, you
was
can't
like,
miss
wow,
it.
I love it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, no, I love it. No, people get more of them. I mean, again, we really just started pushing this hard 3 months ago, probably, really, when we really started getting out there. So we'll start to see the larger companies as well.
But I have to say, I really liked the design, because when you're getting in the elevator, it's like you're not getting in an elevator, you're
Yes.
getting on a plane.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, I'm going someplace now, not just up, but like.
You're sitting right beside Melvin when you're in there, so
But it was, I really enjoyed that marketing, because I think it's really clever.
Yeah, that was a great one by our marketing folks, so we love that one. So, and it's obviously gets a ton of views down there, so. So next thing along these same lines is we always had our air service focus group. We are getting back, that kind of died off through the pandemic. We're working back. Thank you again to Frank for that one. And Ann Baum, who has been on this for quite a while, has been our co-chair. They've agreed to stay on. We're actually kind of rebranding this as an air service task force instead of focus group. We think it just fits a little better. So right now we're working on a webinar type presentation for the greater Lehigh Valley community for October. That'll help us find the future members for this and, enlist some of the businesses that are traveling a lot, get the right people on this group. working on, what that purpose, mission and vision for the task force should be, and then, kind of scheduling how often we want to meet. We've done everything from monthly to annually, and monthly is way too often.
This week should be good.
I think we'll probably do it, twice a year. The idea would be but be able to bring this group in when we really get it. So if we get to the point that we're close to the finish line on a route where we need that community support to we have these folks ready to go. So more to come on that as well. Actually, we're meeting this afternoon with Frank and Ann to discuss all this, so we'll keep that going as well.
Hey, Darren.
Yes, sir.
Just a thought. I think the air service group is remarkably important to us, but we're also indicating that so much of our traffic is recreational and so on. Are we doing anything to try to engage some of the most frequent flyers that we have to determine if there's something we can do to make it a better experience, or can they help us in passing the word?
And we have done that in the past. With our Aero Club, we've brought those folks in, which are, a lot of our frequent flyers. Definitely think it's something we could probably pull together another kind of focus group, for lack of a better term, I guess.
Sometimes we let people know they're important to us, or let them feel that they're important to us, that it really can assist in them spreading the word as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely talk about doing that again. And we got some good information we've done in the past, so it's definitely worth the time to do it. And then just the last slide here, just on some upcoming air service events. We'll be out in Vegas at the end of September. You won't see my smiling face at the board meeting because we'll be out there meeting with Legion instead.
I still contend that's a good thing. As much as we like you.
Listen, I'm fine with it too. Yeah, so they do their airports conference every year. I missed it last year. They did not do it last year. It's a great time for us to sit down and really get a little more quality time with their route planning folks, their marketing folks. So pretty much all their airports are invited. It's not required, but it's required. So we would go either way probably, but we definitely will be there. Then the other two, we are planning to attend another airport roundtable down in Wilmington. That's always a smaller, usually about 50 to 75 attendees. They get anywhere from, say, 4 to 6 airlines, so it's great. You get a lot of really good one-on-one time with the airlines there as well. And then Takeoff North America is another one similar to Roots, actually run by the same folks as Roots, but geared more towards the smaller airports. The reason I say planning to is, again, like everything else, just looking to see what happens with the pandemic and everything else. As long as things stay where they are, or don't get significantly worse, we will be at those as well. So that's all I got. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Darren?
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that. And let's move on to Ryan.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Morning, everybody. Sorry I can't be there in person, but hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Yep.
No problem.
Great. All right, so Savette, if you don't mind running through. Thank you. So, going through the projects, obviously we've done before. The runway, again, obviously with the multiple packages, trying to make it as simple as possible to follow. Really with package 1 through 3, a lot of the work, and you'll see in the next couple slides, are really going to complete this year with a major portion of it being done during the intersection closure later in September, which we'll talk about here in a bit. But again, the big takeaway also is maximizing the use of all the grant funds. You probably remember we've said this before regarding savings in terms of work hours and efficiencies with construction have given us the ability to go back to the FAA to have more pavement area completed within the grant amount, so we're not asking for more grant money and then we're not giving more grant money back. If you want to go to the next slide, Sylvette. So package 2, there are 2 grants associated with package 2, if you recall, 106 and 108. 108 is actually in the process of being closed, which will be great to get that off the books. And actually in closing that, it gives us about $800,000 in reimbursements that we have to wait until we get to that 90% completion portion of the grant. So obviously we're looking to close that out here in the next month. And then as I mentioned with 106, continuing with some of the Taxiway Alpha work, and then doing some work also during the intersection closure. Next slide. So package 3, one of the newer ones from last year for a 2020 grant. So this was the primary one that was focused on the intersection closure. Again, we've been holding monthly airline coordination meetings, calls, following up with airlines, confirming. But again, where we are now, just as a reminder, 2 scheduled airfield closures. You'll see them there on the bottom, but and we've been sending a lot of notice out, but we'll kind of say it again. September 17th, 12:01 a.m. to Monday, September 19th, just before midnight. So that's the first 72-hour closure. And then week and a half later on Tuesday, September 28th, right after midnight, 12:01 through Thursday, September 30th, 6 a.m. with the 54 hours. So again, coordinating with the airlines between the weekend and during the week to really accommodate everybody's schedule, because each airline and cargo carriers had different parameters in terms of weekend versus weekdays. Next slide. So we added package 4 based on the approvals earlier this year and the grant that we accepted and received. Again, what package 4 entails, and again, a lot of different components, is the areas in red, which is a portion of the midfield paving, as well as what we're calling taxiway Gulf relocation. I think we talked about it before, alleviating that direct Alpha 3 access from runway 624 to the air carrier apron, and then including some of the other glide slope, regrading, shoulder construction within that blue area you see there near 24, and then rehabilitating or actually reconstructing Taxiway Echo North that's been closed for some time due to the pavement condition and that being a haul route for the construction. So the next big thing on here, other than again working during the closures in September, is we actually had a great meeting yesterday with our operations group, with Steve and his team, and coordinating basically between now and December all of the airfield closures, impacts, actually in the landside impacts as well. The biggest one being Taxiway Alpha in that red area for Taxiway, that Gulf construction. We're actually going to close Taxiway Alpha within that section. So obviously coordinating with operations and ATC is part of that, that discussion. Next slide, please. Again, here's the overall newsletter that we published, to the stakeholders. Again, blue substantially complete. The green is the active construction. In the intersection, they've been doing the night work for a lot of the electrical prep for the September closures. And then obviously continuing on with the other areas in yellow that we showed before. Next slide. So here's basically all of the work that we've been doing and will be continue to be doing this year, some rolling into next year, but for the most part, completing this year. As I mentioned, the intersection. Previously, when we talked about package 4, after these 4 packages, the entire runway length will have been rehabilitated and strengthened. The future packages are all for taxiway fillet improvements and the shoulder construction. So we're definitely happy about utilizing those grant funds for that piece of it. All right, moving on to our parking lot project. Project is substantially complete. Gotten all the punch list items done with the contractor. Really just working through some minor programming with Designa, the parking access revenue control system supplier. We do have a final inspection with PennDOT on September 1st. Because of the grant funding, they just have to come out, confirm everything that we've done, and then we can get the final reimbursement there as well, which has about $100,000 left to complete that. One thing to note, the project was completed under budget, roughly around $22,000 under, which we'll show on the last slide, but definitely happy to get that done. And as we've mentioned before, as Todd alluded to in the budget discussion, this was one of the projects that we continued during the pandemic, and had we not, it would have been a much different experience for our passengers in May through July, given the numbers that we had and the closures that were required at the booth and in the entrance lane. So just wanted to throw that out, but that project is complete. Go to the next slide. You see just some photos that we've shown before. On the left, the great before and after. The equipment basically that was falling apart to obviously the new equipment that's been working out well so far. Passenger boarding bridge repairs, just a quick update here. Mare Bridge was back on site early August, did some work, and then we're off for a few weeks and are coming back in early September to continue working on Bridge 2. They did, when they were here in August, complete all of the vertical drive components for the bridges 2, 9A, 11, and 12. So when they come back, we'll be doing Bridge 2, painting of Bridge 9, and once those are complete, we'll be working on Bridge 10, which requires a little bit more time to confirm what the repairs are going to be to take it out of service. So obviously we wanted to make sure all the other bridges were rehabilitated prior to doing that. Next slide. So now moving on to Queen City.
There were no grants for that one.
No grants on that one.
Because that's maintenance.
It's because,
Considered maintenance.
right, it's considered, maintaining the
Yeah.
existing equipment. So new bridge, we purchase new bridges, but maintaining them, not so much.
Just asking.
Sure, good question.
Can I ask a question? How many electric charging stations do we have on property?
We have 10.
And how many we're gonna have? Is there plans for more?
At this point, we don't have additional plans.
Are they being used?
I'm not sure.
Are they being used?
I'm not sure on utilization. If Glenn, do you know in terms of our ability to track, or Ryan, that I don't know if we have.
We do get some reports. That's probably a better question for Michael from parking.
Sure.
I mean, it's not being used.
Not yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
You see cars there now and then.
I mean, it's a few, but we've had 2 or 3 at one time. That's a lot.
Because there's so many Teslas and like EVs on the road now, it's like you can't, I don't go a day without seeing like 20 at least.
Yeah, right.
It's like they're really picking up, so.
Right.
It's good that we're ahead of the game. We're
Yes.
not behind it. We just have to make sure that we keep doing it.
Yeah, as we look at other parking improvements, it's certainly something we want to make sure that it's included.
Yeah, and I think that, do our passengers know that that's one of the amenities, like have
Oh,
we
yes.
marked it? Okay, good.
Yeah, I know Colin did a lot of work to get that out there, so.
Social media announcing, yeah. Anytime there's a car parked in there, we've done things with some of our White Hammer, who helps us with our website. They want individuals in there, and he took a picture of himself, and we shared, yeah. I mean, we like to put that out there, and when it's being used, for sure.
Great.
Thanks.
Sure. Good question.
Yep, good questions. Go to the next slide, Sylvette. So the next 2 are with Queen City. So a couple of quick updates here. So with our construction removal, phase 2, I think we mentioned before, all of the trees that were included in the project have been removed. Some have been replanted, but then the final plantings will occur this fall. Just another quick update here is we had a final survey conducted August 18th. We're waiting on the final report, but what we want to be able to do and what the FAA requires us to confirm is there were no additional trees that have grown quicker or faster than expected from when the survey was done quite some time, almost 10 years ago at this point. So we want to make sure that with the obstructions that we've removed, we've taken care of everything. Obviously, because as of August 12th, as we mentioned last month, in July, the night approaches to runway 15 have officially been reinstated. It's no longer on the FAA publication, so we obviously want to keep it that way with trees that might be close to that surface, that threshold sighting surface that was affecting that approach. So more to come on if there's any additional removal that's required. But as of right now, that has been lifted, which was a big push for this project. The big thing, obviously, is just coordinating with the City of Allentown and Mack Trucks on the tree plantings that we're doing there as well. So, big thing, even working with the City of Allentown of where they have potential projects or improvements within the Parkway path. So it's not necessarily going to be in these areas. It's in areas that the community using the park and the trails actually get some benefit from it as well. So helping them with that will be a good thing. Next one. So again, quick update here as well. Working through the design, we did have a document review meeting this past week with the FAA just to review where we were our design assumptions regarding the width. I think we had talked about before, some of the electrical upgrades required. But basically, coming up in September, we'll have the 60% documents to review. And then, as we've mentioned before, bid documents around December to bid the project, early winter, spring timeframe to get ready for the grant for 2022, which is due around early May, to get that in as quickly as we can. So still working through that design to keep that project moving. And then one for Braden. So terminal building, biggest change here. We talked about the cost savings before. We've been talking about starting the project in September. So where we are with that, September being right around the corner, is the township building permitting is in the final stages of approval. We can go back and forth with the township on some comments, making sure that we're giving them everything they need. But we should be getting that in the next few weeks. But then the biggest thing that really dictates the timing of when we can actually start is the 7460 airspace approval. That process has been taking more than 60 days on average, and we're right around that 60-day mark. So working with our FA folks to try and get that expedited. But until we get that, PennDOT won't have a pre-construction meeting to get that set up. So we're trying to get all that lined up. Contractors basically ready to go beginning of September. So once we know that date, work with Colin to get something out. But excuse me, but that's where we are with continuing that to move forward. The state has accepted everything else that we've provided for the grant. It's really those two pieces that that we're waiting on. But definitely looking forward to get that started once we get those in hand. And then a quick update on the lovely entrance construction that's been going on out on Airport Road. They did the initial paving at the entrance. You may have noticed driving in, it's a little smoother than it was before. That was just the initial base paving. The final lift will be sometime in September. We're waiting on some information from them. And it'll actually go a little bit further into our entrance. As you might notice, right after where they stopped, the pavement isn't in the best condition. So we're having them go and take out more to make it, obviously better for coming in. What we have heard at this point, we don't have any definitive dates, but the project is ahead of schedule. We mentioned before, basically beginning of January of next year was when they were contracted to be complete. So the sooner the better on this one, but it's good to hear that they are ahead of schedule. And then here's our summary slide as we've done before. You'll see the parking lot again will come off next month where we ended there. We added the package 4, technically our phase 9, our 9th grant associated with the runway. See all the numbers lined up and looking good. And then again, as we continue, as Todd alluded to with our budgeting and into next year, there'll be some more added and hopefully some of these runways coming off after the intersection closure. So that's all I had, unless anyone had any questions.
I have one question.
Yep.
Ryan, can you, I couldn't find it in the notes. Can you give me an estimate for the completion date for packages 3 and 4 for the runway rehabilitation?
Sure. So package 3, we're looking to be complete this year with most of the work being done during the intersection closure. And then package 4, if weather cooperates, that would be this year as well. If not, it'll finish in the spring of next year. So the initial schedule we actually received, if you want to scroll up so that to the package 4, one of the overall graphic slides, down 7, keep going. Slide 8, go to slide 8, that's fine. Go down one more, there you go. The Taxiway Echo North reconstruction, they're actually planning to do before the winter. Again, weather dependent, that might push into spring, but ideally all of that would be completed this year. And actually, it was on Todd's cash flow. We can kind of show it, take a look at it again later. The November, December, you'll see our disbursements are pretty large because of all of this work happening at once. But then on the tail side of that is all of our reimbursements, with package 4 being 100% funded. So it's making sure we're on top of that timing as well.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yep, no problem.
Ryan, a question for you, and I think for Tom as well. As we think about Braden, one of the things we were concerned about and actually developed plans for was some commercial development on the Braden site. And Forks Township was difficult to deal with. I noticed that along Sullivan Trail, Route 115 right now, they've got GADS development going on, all kinds of restaurants and fast food shops and so on, starting from what would be the giant shopping center and moving north. Do we have any ongoing conversations with Forks to continue our thoughts on the Braden property?
We certainly are, and I know we've been working with the solicitor's office on that as well. So continuing to work through additional proposals on other projects, development, things that you're referring to, Mike. And I don't know, Judge, if there's anything else we want to mention here.
Well, we're exploring the zoning law and Forks in terms of what has to be accomplished, and one of the things that we're looking at is supporting documentation with regard to evaluations about impact on traffic and the impact on the community. That involves hiring professionals to do that kind of work. We need to know the depth of information that the township is requiring there, and we're engaged in that process now.
It was just interesting. They were so, I thank you, they were so negative, and yet now they're looking at several thousand, more than 1,000 housing and apartment units going in up there and so on. So some of their concerns seem to be mitigated.
Sure.
But thank you.
Certainly.
No further questions for Ryan. I don't think we've got any new business to discuss. And so if there's no new business, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. In a second?
I'll second it.
Very good. Thank you. Then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Minds, just because we do have a big agenda, and we'll make sure we do get out of here on time, we can jump right into the executive committee.
Sure.
Great. Welcome everyone then, 10:48 a.m. We'll get started with our executive committee meeting. Tara, I think you can go ahead and perform a roll call. I think we're all here.
Or Sylvette can.
I was thinking about you. You weren't here.
I would do it if you need me to. I think you got this, though.
Where's Tara? You've been on my mind. Thank you, Tara.
All
Sylvette,
right.
please do.
No problem. Okay, Matt Turk,
Here.
John Hayes was on the line.
He was on earlier. I'm not sure if he's still on. Might have had to jump off here.
Okay. Brian Daines.
Here.
Mike Stershik.
Here.
Tara Zirinsky.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. Is there any public comment for the executive committee?
We do not, sir.
Wonderful. Okay. I will then move on to a bulk of action items here. The first is the approval of our meeting minutes from last month. Are there any additions to the minutes as presented in Novus? None. I'd ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 24th, 2021.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Tara. Second from Brian. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we'll move on to our Florio Perucci invoices. We're going to take a look at both June and July, since we did not meet in July. Those are in Novus for your review. Are there any questions related to those invoices? I take a motion to approve the Florio Perucci invoices for June and July 2021. Thank you, Mike. Got a second? Thank you, Tara. All in favor of approving those invoices, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. They are approved. Darren, are you going to walk us through the Air Products lease?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so very excited to be here talking about this one. We've worked on this one for a little while now. Honestly, between myself and Ryan and Matt McConnell, actually Ryan and Matt probably do more of the heavy lifting than me on this one, but the last several months just trying to work out stormwater and things like that to really figure out what this leasehold was ultimately going to be. So we've got that all worked out. Outside of just sort of, dotting I's and crossing T's, the lease is done. Lease has pretty much been done for quite a while now. Ended up being about a 4.8 acre site that they'll be using. It's a 29-year lease term, $165,000 beginning on the rent commencement date, which is basically when they get their certificate of occupancy. So we're a couple years away from that. Just some of the timelines for Air Products. Once we sign the lease, they've got 12 months to get their permits. It is subject to 1 6-month extension with a little, there's some milestones they have to hit in there. Just so basically, as long as they're pursuing and making progress, we would give them that 6-month extension. So I know they've already started the preliminary part of that process. They don't want it to take any longer than 12 months for sure. So once they get the permits, once the permit period expires, they've got up to 4 months then to get actual construction started, and another 20 months, so 24 total from the expiration of the permitting period to get the construction complete. They also have 8 months after they get their permits to reroute our airside vehicle service road. That was actually something that was our responsibility in our initial conversation with them. They're actually going to do it, and we're going to reimburse them since they will be on site. It just makes more sense than us bringing a second contractor in to do that work. As far as timelines for us, once we sign this, we've got 3 months to demolish a garage that's on site. It's an older.
We have 3 months?
Yes. Demolish that and remove an old construction type job trailer that's there as well. Work with that. Most of that will be done internally by our maintenance folks. We've already discussed that with Steve's team, so don't see any issues there. And then once Air Products tells us they've got all their permits and approvals, we've got 6 months to get utilities to the site. We do have some language in the lease to address the fact that some of that's out of our control, because as we have experienced in the past, we may want them there whenever we want them. It's up to utility companies to get them there. So, but like I said, that's in the lease to address those concerns. Then once that airside service road is done, we've got 30 days to reimburse them. But I think at this point we do have a plan for that. That is eligible, FAA eligible for AIP money. So we're working through that. Again, it's a little bit down the road yet before we get to there. So everything here is consistent with our airport layout plan. The lease obviously contains all of our standard provisions, indemnification, non-discrimination, all the required FAA provisions. Both our Aviation Council and the Solicitor's Office have worked on this. So they, it's been reviewed more often than we needed to probably. And at the end of 29 years, we own a hangar, so that everything comes back to us at the end. So, which everyone always loves to do when they're invested in money to build, but that's the way it works on airports. So, I'm happy to answer any questions.
What's the exact location of this?
Can you pull up? There's an exhibit in here. So you can kind of see our parking lot out here, our old terminal building over in this area. Parking lot, some of our rental car area, so it's right here. So just kind of right down that way a little bit here on the adjacent to the main terminal.
Main terminal and the departure building are just off the ground.
Yeah, you can't really see them. So basically, our main terminal sort of over in this area somewhere.
And if it helps, Brian, this is the tip of Hangar 3 where Air Products is operating today.
Okay, so what happens to Hangar 3? Have you got someone else lined up? Or
We've got people that are interested. I mean, we've got 2 years till they'll be out of there, so we'll, we definitely have a couple folks saying we want first dibs, and we'll see. We always have a lot of that until you tell them they got to start paying, so we'll see. But yeah, I don't think we'll be in trouble renting it.
And when was Hangar 3 constructed?
Hangar 3 is one of our older ones.
Yeah.
What kind of shape is it in?
It's actually in really good shape, to be honest. It's got a lot of office space, honestly. It's probably got more office space than we would like in a hangar, so that's a little bit of a challenge to do something with. But the hangar itself, I think will be, there are other tenants in there too, so it's not just Air Products in that hangar today.
But that's an indication of the value of having a big, significant tenant.
Oh, yeah.
Is that they're going to leave, we know they'll leave this building in good shape.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
In 29 years, we inherit something that's in good shape.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are provisions in the lease to address that as well. So we don't get something back at the end of this lease that we wouldn't want, so we do have the ability to make them make repairs, things like that, before we take it back. Anything else? Other questions? Again, exciting kind of, hopefully they'll be in front of the township soon, working on permitting and everything else. So just asking for authorization, pending a final review by our solicitor, because we don't have the final draft back from Air Products yet, but we will run it by the solicitor. Actually, Robert Schwartz has been working on this, and Robert may be on the line at this point, but he will give us a final review before we sign anything.
Excellent. If there's no other questions, I'd ask for a motion to approve the terms of the lease pending review by the solicitor and to authorize staff to execute.
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Tara.
Second.
Thank you, Ryan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm not opposed, so motion carries. Excellent. Thanks, Darren. And equally interesting is...
We're going to save, you can close that. We're going to save the majority of this for exec session, and then we'll...
Okay. Then we will take a commercial services update and welcome Connie to the floor for the first time in a long time. Yeah, but excited to hear from you.
I was trying to make you nervous.
Nah.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you what we do in commercial services. So commercial services, we have two departments. We have passenger services and airline services. But this mask is getting me today. So we should have 35 to 40 employees within this department. We provide services such as we're the airport greeters. We also provide a lot of information, hotels, car rentals, flight information, ground transportation, general information. So they're hopping down there usually. If you need luggage assistance, we're here to help. Of course, we provide wheelchair assistance. If you need a car jump, that's us. Parking helps us as well a little bit. And then we also provide Transbridge bus ticket sales. And when needed, we provide shuttle service for our overflow parking lot. So they're busy. It's a busy department. It was busy this summer, that's for sure. Next to that. I just wanted to share a few stats with you just to take a look at some of the numbers. In 2019, we had a huge number of passengers that we assisted with wheelchairs. And of course, 2020, no surprise, it was down. In 2021, about the same. But what we did notice was it seems as though everybody was vaccinated and could fly again. And so a lot of our disabled customers really got busy with the wheelchair assistance and probably had about like 43-ish a day. But a lot of those wheelchairs are on the same flight. So we could have an aircraft come in and they could request 15 wheelchairs coming in, another 12 going out. So it was definitely all hands on deck this summer for sure. So we do provide the assistance for our Legionnaire, American Airlines, Delta, and United Airlines. And of course, if you're interested in the car jumps, like Becky's driving. I'm very excited about the new wheelchairs, especially unlike the standard wheelchairs. There's a little compartment underneath that we can put the carry-on luggage, and that is very helpful just to say, be more efficient, assisting the customers with their bags, and there's a lot of them. I was telling Tom, I said, every day I have a new bruise from carrying the carry-on bags and helping the passengers, so that's going to be very helpful. So we did purchase 20 of them just in August, and very exciting and really good feedback on the wheelchairs. All right, we also provide the Transbridge ticket sales. We entered into partnership in December of 2017. Our ticketing hours, they fluctuate, based on the bus schedule. I think currently we have about 50 hours, this month. You can see how the bus schedule service was impacted by the pandemic. And these are approximates based on the schedule. They fluctuate throughout the year, but currently we're serving Newark Airport and Port Authority Bus Terminal and some local buses.
So that was in 2019, that was approximately one daily departure?
No, those are the weekly departures.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah, the weekly departures. So it's a little reduced on the weekends, but So it's down a little bit. You know, obviously the Bayonne, New Jersey was a good destination for the cruise ships. We haven't seen that yet. JFK. Just name it up. All right, coming soon to your neighborhood airport, we have a shuttle van coming soon, which we are excited about because in 2019 in the summer, as well as this past summer, the parking lot filled up for Todd. And then all the passengers came in for the rest of us to handle. But we are looking at, I'm not sure of the exact timeline. I do think very soon, maybe early next month, we'll have this, get it logoed, and it will be a huge help to start this service back when the parking lot does max out.
So that stays on property, right? That's
Yes,
a
that will
shuttle.
be ours, and that will be in commercial services just for the assistance. So we're working right now to cross-train some of our staff so they can help with wheelchair assistance, and then if needed, and we have to, you know, operate the shuttle service, we can, you know, do both.
One that we had, if you remember, during 2019, we had the other shuttle, but we actually rented that car from one of the, I think it was Enterprise. We rented it, but you can't rent them anymore. You couldn't even buy them. We had to track this down. I mean, this was not an easy thing to track this down. And actually, we were using one of our Tahoes temporarily to help folks because we had nothing else. So we're really excited about this. I mean, this was a lot of work every week. What are we doing? What are we doing? But our purchasing guy really tracked this down. I think this was found this in Washington. I mean, you can't find them anywhere. Yeah,
We
Washington
don't want to be in
State.
that situation again. We want to own
14,
it.
15 seats?
Well, you get to, I mean, so much of the work is about being the front-facing customer service and branding. This allows us to do that in a significant way and not be an enterprise van.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely something we're excited about.
Yeah, so you're gonna brand this too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, wrap it.
But
Wrap it or
it's ours.
Take it to an Eagles game or something.
There you go.
Definitely.
We'll put chamber around it, there you go.
We'll rent it out on during slow months. So that was basically passenger services. I know it's just a few slides, but they are very, very busy. And, you know, as with everyone else, it was a challenge this summer for the staff, for sure. The other part of commercial services is the airline services team, 40 to 50 employees at any given time. We do provide the ground handling services right now, of course, for Allegiant. We do everything for Allegiant. We check the customers in, we process the bags, we board them at the gate. Funny story, I was out at the gate boarding, and it was busy because during the summer we had, I mean, quite a few days, over 1,000 people at one shot. I was boarding, scanning, and Ann Baum was boarding. She was like, "Honey, it's Ann Baum." I'm like, "Oh, hey, Ann." Because it just was so busy out there. It really was busy. But we do everything. We clean the aircraft. We provide the commissary service. We stock and restock all of the beverage carts and snack carts and do the lab service. Of course, we handle the public charters that come in during the year. And then another huge one is the aircraft de-icing. So the year was, you know, it was odd. It was an odd year with the pandemic. You can clearly see in the beginning of the year, we were still way behind what was happening in 2019. And maybe about April, started checking the bookings. And by May, I was like, wow, we're going to be in trouble. All the flights are filling up, and we are going to have a busy, busy summer. And we sure did. So the 16% increase in the passenger travel for the summer of 2019 versus 2021, I mean, it was the busiest June and July I have seen in many, many years. And coming off of last year, which was about 32,000 passengers for the same time period, I mean, it was tough. The staff I cannot say enough about. They worked overtime, double time, 6 days a week, split shifts. So we're looking forward to things getting back to normal for a few months. And August this year, looking at the bookings, it looks to be about the same as 2019. Of course, we handle the public charters. We have one next week to Laughlin, Nevada. It's with Caesars Entertainment and VIP Gambling Tours. And then October, we have one to Memphis. So We typically handle about 6 charters a year. And Swift Air is soon to be Arrow Airways and Sun Country. They alternate between the 2 air carriers for their charters. De-icing, well, de-icing season is getting ready to start, as you know, Brian, October 15th. So the entire month of September will be spent just training our staff on the 6 airlines that we do provide the service to. Last year was a very, very busy winter. So we'll see what happens this year, but ABX Air, Atlas Air, Air Transport, Sun Country, they will all be up on the cargo ramp. And then, of course, Allegiant Air, and then we do the backup de-icing for United Airlines.
FedEx does their own.
FedEx does do their own, yes, for now. And that's the quick overview of what we do in commercial services. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yes, Brian?
I have to say, I'm stunned at how many jump starts you have to do.
I know.
How much time that must take.
I have to tell you, the biggest challenge is staffing for the unknown. Just don't know, what's going to be needed during the day. So, once it gets beyond the staff that we have scheduled, well, then the managers jump in. And like I said in May to the team upstairs, I said, I'll see you guys in September, because it was all hands on deck. This summer was tough. 95,000 passengers just we handled in our department for June and July, and over, about 610 arrivals and departures. And there were days it was almost 24 hours a day till, the first flights left in the morning and the last flights left at, came back at night, and then we had to clean them. And so it was a long summer, but I have a fantastic team, and looking forward to, hiring a few more, getting ready for the holiday season.
Your team is, I want to comment that it's so remarkable, and I asked Tom to get some of the other folks that we don't hear from all the time to present to us, because it is helpful to understand the people behind the team here, right? The people who are on the team, because this is the passenger services is the passenger experience, and even if everything else is going right, if your team isn't performing, that's what makes people nuts, right? And so your team often means the difference between a great airport experience and a not great airport experience. And I think we're incredibly lucky here at ABE to have you and such a fantastic team behind you delivering those services.
I really appreciate it.
And I think, also interestingly, I think there's a lot of stuff that somebody who's not really deeply involved in airport operations don't even know that your team handle some of this work. Like the people who are, when we get off a plane, we see somebody coming in to clean the plane, and we don't even think about who employs them or where they're coming from, and knowing that that's your team, I think is helpful.
That's a good point. Nothing just happens, and it's good to see how it happens.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Remember, I can make your reservations. Just call me.
So, you said you're going to hire a couple more people.
Yes.
Are you experiencing any difficulties hiring people? Given,
Yes.
and what are you doing to incentivize that? Because I was at NAC this morning for opening days, and we just went over this and how difficult it is, because you can go down the street to like Amazon and get a bonus and $22 an hour. So what are you doing, or what is your team doing to embrace that?
Very quickly, we recognize who loves the job and who doesn't. And even during the interviews, a lot of our interviews are, they're walking, touring interviews. In fact, if the flight's being processed, that's when I'll intentionally try to schedule some of the interviews, because they have to have the passion to want to be here, because, the pay is not huge. I know we are looking at some things with Todd's group, so we can, compensate the employees a little bit better. I will tell you this, they do offer flight passes. If you are trained on Legion Air, they offer the team that. So that is something that incentivizes the team.
So you could travel.
Yeah, we offer flexible scheduling where you can shift trade with, anyone who's equally qualified and trained as you. And I guess just trying to make it the best place to work, keep it friendly and, you know, one day at a time, because it was a hot summer and it was, it was tough, but we have a really good team, and Legion will be 16 years in December, and we still have a few employees who started with us 16 years ago.
And your employees are non-union, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
You have your work cut out for you,
Yeah.
that's obvious.
We're busy, but we love it.
Yeah, but your presentation was very good, and I'm glad that you were able to give that to us, because I think it's important that the board understands all the different aspects of the operations, and that there's so much more that goes into the airport that we don't always know about, so thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for that update. We do have Solicitor's performance evaluation. I believe we're going to do that after we adjourn. I'm trying to remember this.
Under the law, solicitor is not an employee or an officer. As a result, this is not subject to the personnel exception under the right to, or the public meeting. Therefore, the solicitor's evaluation is done in public session.
Okay.
I asked that it be deferred to the end because, as I've done in the past, I excuse myself so that there's free and open communication here without having me hover over it. So
very good.
We'll put that off to the end.
Very good. I would ask if there's any new business, and without any, we do have a need for executive session. There's a couple of litigation matters that we need to discuss, and I think we'll also be discussing the terms of the some real estate matters. Correct, Aaron?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's for
looking for any motion at this point. The matter is on the agenda for Tuesday before the board, at which time it will be further discussed.
Thank you, Judge. So I will ask for a motion to approve the ground lease agreement, or ground lease option agreement with Majestic, subject to final solicitor's review. Thank you, Tara. Take a second for my.
Finally?
Yeah. Thank you. And all in favor, please do say aye emphatically.
Aye.
Aye. Great. So we will, we do have the solicitor's performance evaluation. We're running up against time, so I'm going to hold that for our September meeting, if it's okay with everybody. We'll use the time then. I don't think we're obligated to.
No, sir.
We can hold off. So we'll do that in September. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Tara. And that finishes us off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.